Hello and welcome to Nodes and Biscuits, a Godot Game Dev Podcast yet again. I'm Christoph Klestel, your host, and today we have a guest who has absolutely no chill when it comes to releasing games. He's published over 12 games in just the last 3 years. We'll talk all about how he does it. And we also take a look at what issues he's faced with Godot 4.1 in his latest release. So buckle up and let's head straight into the episode. So, hello Martin, your surname is Firbacher, is that right?
Firbacher, yeah, close enough.
Alright, very nice. Is that does that come from German?
Yeah, there's a little story in my family about it. So it used to be spelled with the German. Yeah, it used to be spelled with the German U. Mm-hmm. You know, the U with the two dots. And sometime in 14th century, my family lived in a little village, and there was a priest who couldn't write German, so he just changed one of the letters to I because he knew how to write it. So now it's a bit more Czechified, if you will.
There you go. So, well, surnames are a really funny thing, but enough about that. You're a game developer.
Yeah.
Let's just transition into that area. Right, so some people may know you as Firma, as that's your handle on some social media. And also, you've got a company, a game dev studio company called Daisy Games.
Yeah.
I think it would be just perfect if we start with your journey into game development. How did you get into game development? When was it? What happened? What inspired you to start making games?
Well, it goes all the way back to me just playing my first video game ever. I was 3 or 4 years old. One time, I was at my grandpa's place, and one of my, I don't know who, if it was my mom or dad, they come to me and they're like, hey, come to grandpa's office, there's something cool. And I go there with them, and there's this huge CRT monitor, and they sit me in front of it, and there's Spear of Destiny, which is the expansion pack for Wolfenstein 3D, just running. And I get to play it for the very first time, and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool, And 1 year later, I get my own PC, and yeah, that's pretty much where it started. The TLDR would be, I really wanted to do something inside of the games themselves, not just play them. So I was just going through the folders and seeing if there's some programs I can run. Sometimes some game would have a third-party tool there, because I got it from a CD from an uncle that would allow you to make your own maps, missions, or customize textures, whatever. So yeah, I basically accidentally started modding games in very amateur, bad ways.
The best way to go about it. I still think that modding games is just the best way to start, doing game dev. Do you remember the first game that you modded in any way?
Well, if you're talking just making custom maps, that would be probably Warcraft 2. Okay. If you're talking actual changing something inside the base game, I'm pretty sure that was Wolf 3D, and there was some program I ran on my PC that allowed me to change the textures. That was pretty much it. Okay. So that would be the first 2 experiences.
All right. So you were changing textures. Do you still? Yeah. Do you have any memory of what textures you changed? Was it a test texture of sorts, or did you actually paint it?
Yeah, I painted it. I painted it inside the program itself, which it was even worse than doing something in MS Paint.
Oh no!
But I actually even remember what I did. I was unhappy with, because the guns in Wolf 3D, you can tell they're guns, but they don't really look like anything, right? Mm-hmm. They don't look like a specific gun. So I was so young, I had no conception of things the Germans use these guns, the British use these guns. I just knew the Sten gun from movies, I think even. And I just replaced the submachine gun with the Sten submachine gun. And of course, it used 3 colors or something. It was very squarish shape, but yeah, that's what I did. I think I replaced the knife with a pitchfork because I don't know why. I just did.
I can't imagine anything better. Why a knife when you can have a pitchfork?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice, nice. So you got into modding because your passion was sparked, right? So
Yeah,
that's how
yeah,
it all happened. Um,
yeah.
and how did it go from there? Right? Did you go and learn new development tools, or was it school that ignited this, that carried on with this? What was it?
So for a few more years, I would say until I was like 7, 8, I would just play new game. I was like, yeah, this game is cool, and I would look if it has like inbuilt map editor and whatnot. Really, for the most, I didn't. Yeah, I don't think I did that. Like, I think that was pretty much what I did. Just like trying to ways to find my own maps. Sometimes I would look, is there like a way where I can like actually make a campaign out of them, so like you can play them, in a
Nice.
row. Which I think most of the time the answer was no. uh, and eventually I was like, yeah, this is cool, but it would be so much cooler if I could just make my own game, like I could, or if I could change like so much more. And eventually I was like, well, I don't want to just change things. I really just want to make my own game. And this was like still when all I was doing practically was just making my own maps.
Right. What year was this, by the way? Do you
Oh,
remember?
wait. So I'm born 1995. So that would be like 2001, I think.
All right, 2001.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
And
Not even Unity was around back then, right?
no, no, no. The biggest thing that was out back then, or by the time I started getting interested in game development, was Game Maker. And I don't know if you remember, but there was actually quite a big scene in the Czech and Slovak Republic. We had like, there was a website called Velký Chytrák or something like that.
Okay.
I think the people who made Black Hole, you know that one?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
it's
I was
like
out of the scene because around that time, just for the context for the listeners, we're both from the Czech Republic.
yeah.
However, when I was, so it was around the year 2003, I think, I moved to London. So I was very disconnected from the Czech Republic at that time until about 2012, 13, 14, around that time. But yeah,
okay.
I'm learning so much just listening to you.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, yeah. So just TLDR, because there was a company, they were, or I don't even know. No, I don't think they were even a company back then. They were just like, team. They made the game called Patsin. It's like Pac-Man combined with something else, and today they're like an actual professional Czech game studio, and they like release bigger games. Yeah. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Sorry,
and I talked, and like they were from that like little Czech game maker scene back then.
That is awesome.
and that
What's
was-
the name of the studio now, by the way?
If you give me 1 second, I'll find them
worries.
through the game. But I'm bringing it out because basically this all comes from the game maker scene, and that's also like that was my almost first game engine I used. Was Game Maker.
Almost first.
Almost the one I used before, and I can't remember what it was. But if you may,
Alright.
there's like this type of adventure games, right, where it's like first person point and click adventure game. And there was I don't know how I found this. I don't remember. I don't know if it was online or on some CD from some magazine, but there was an engine just made for making those kind of games. And it had some kind of, I don't even remember if it was like drag and drop or if you did some super simple scripting. But basically, I made my really bad first-person adventure games in it. That would take like 5 minutes to finish, but I was just so happy.
Oh my!
And
5 minutes to finish is a long time for a first game, by the way.
yeah,
Congrats.
yeah, definitely.
You should be proud of that one.
Thank you. Yeah, and it was, I never published them. They were lost to time, of course, but
Of course.
I still remember bits of it because I remember I was using a lot of just default assets that were in there, and some of those images are just burnt into my memory because I use them so much. And of course, sometimes I drew my own background in MS Paint, and you could absolutely tell what was the pre-made asset and what I
man,
drew in
That's
MS
awesome.
Paint.
That's awesome. And I think that there is this is something to mention when, even when it's been a long time since you've made your first game, there are some parts of your first games that you will never forget. It's the same way
Yeah.
for me. That's a very
Yeah.
interesting thing. I think it's because the emotional impact of you looking at the first creation being your game is just so powerful.
Yeah, yeah. Also, what I remember is the first games I made or tried to make, right? There was always like a huge inspiration for them. So if I think about like the second, what was my like first actual ambitious project that I ever tried to finish and failed? This was in Game Maker. So I really, as a child, and I think it's still a cool game, I love this game called Medal of Honor Allied Assault. It's a first-person shooter, Second World War. It's back from days when EA used to release really good games.
Good old days.
Yeah. And I just love that game. It had amazing soundtrack. Then I saw the movie Saving Private Ryan, and I was like, wait, is this video game based on real life? Wow! Or is this movie based on the video game? What is going on? You know, I just could, my child mind just couldn't comprehend. But yeah, I love it. And I was like, wow, I wish like Czechs were as cool as the Americans during World War II. So I'm gonna make my own game where the Czechs fight the Germans, and we win, man. We win.
Oh,
so
wow.
I sat down in Game Maker, top down, World War II game. First half you play as Americans, but then you play as Czechs, and you're in Czech Republic, and you're just killing everyone.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so I suppose if that was a success, you would have rewritten some parts of history then, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
People will definitely remember that as being, you know, the way it happened.
Oh, now you're giving me ideas.
There you go.
Ideas in my head. Really,
there you go.
It was also, I remember the name. It was called Fight Against the Germans.
Fight Against the Germans. That's a very telling name. You know exactly what you'll be doing in that game, and I think that's a skill you still have. But let's move on slightly, right? Carry on. What about your journey with game making, right? So. How did that progress onwards with, I don't know, game engines or projects? Go into that. Until we get to Godot, of course, and that's when...
Yeah. So it's a really tragic but very wise tale, you know. Once I lose a bit more hair, I'll be able to sell it online, you know, as the bold wise man. But...
write a book.
So it started with Game Maker, as I've said, and I was incredibly young. In fact, the game I mentioned, the Fight Against Germans, the way I put it together was I would just like go look up tutorials, and I would be like, okay, how do I make enemy rotate? How do I make things shoot bullet? How do I switch level? And it was like a Frankenstein's monster where I like put it together, and it worked until I tried to include a vehicle section, and then like it just broke, and I never could fix it again. There were also issues with like upgrading the Game Maker versions to make some stuff work better, which also, you know, I was a kid, my parents wouldn't spend money on this, so there were certain means I had to use to get the newest Game Maker version, you know. And yeah, so that just killed the game, and that kind of bumped me out. And this there was like this what is it called? A pattern that would repeat itself for the next like over 10 years actually, where I would find something to make a game with, and this could be anything from a game engine. So we're talking Game Maker, Unity, and who knows whatever else I tried, or also frameworks or libraries. So I even tried like C++, C, Allegro. I did all kind of things where I would just take some kind of tool to make a game. I would have super ambitious idea what I want to make. I would try to make it. I would run into some hurdle much rather sooner than later, and I would be like, well, damn, what do I do? I can't even, like, if it was C++, for example, I was like, how do I make a freaking menu, let alone like actually like making a game? And I would get into this cycle of finding a tool, getting ambitious, failing, giving up, coming back with another tool, and now, oh crap, I tried this like a year ago and I failed. Well, now I have to be even more ambitious to make up for the lost time, right? And this kept repeating for since I first wanted to make a game, this was basically happening for like 16 years in a row. Until I got sick enough and I was like, okay, you're gonna make a game in 2-3 days, and I don't care if it sucks, you're just gonna finish a game, because like, holy shit, you spent over 15 years of your life trying to make a game and you didn't succeed.
Yeah, it's a lifetime of frustration, right?
Yeah.
Did you have any formal education in terms of programming, by the way?
No. I mean,
was it all self-taught? That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we did have like Pascal lessons in high school, but it's like saying you know how to do Hello World, and that's your IT education or programming education. You know.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just meh.
Oh my. All right. Gotcha. Right. So you set out to make a game in 3-4 days. Mm-hmm. A really quick one.
Yeah, and it was with Godot, by the way. So
so now we're talking. What year was this?
okay, so this was November 2020.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So the
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Okay. Yes.
So I knew Godot for a while. I started using Godot in 2019, summer 2019, and that was still like when I was inside that cycle of I have a tool, let's make something with this. And first I tried to make some kind of like resource people management game. Oops, too complex. Okay, but I learned a lot about Godot. Then I was like, okay, let's make a cool open world RPG with this and that and roguelite. Oh, oops, a bit too big.
An open world RPG, the best kind.
Yeah. But one thing I have to give Godot is that it's not as scary as the other engines. Or at least there's something about Godot that just makes my brain really click with it well, where I didn't give up on the tool. Like, this is also probably because, I was a bit older, a bit wiser. I had some also I worked like SQL job beforehand, so I mean, SQL isn't programming language, but I did have some like building something from ground up experience already.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, I feel like Godot really helped me like stick to it because I was like, okay, this tool is actually good. I'm learning, and every time I gave up on project, I actually like felt like I learned something inside the engine, and I was like, okay, now I know how to do this better. So let me stick with Godot and let's try to make something else. Until I was like, okay, I just have to make a small game. Just try to do that, and because when you're making like a prototype or you're starting a project and you give up on it, right? There's usually a lot of things you don't do. So basically I was just stuck like making some kind of gameplay loop, and I never tried things like, oh, what about audio? What about music? What about settings menu? What about any menu, right? What about saving, loading? So that was like really the cool thing about the first game I made is that it was super small. It was made in a couple of days, but everything was there. It had menu. It didn't have save and load per se. It remembered like how many levels you got into, but like still there was some kind of progression and some tracking of it.
Absolutely. Games don't need saving and loading anyway. It's fine.
Well, some games don't. Yeah, definitely.
And is this game available anywhere? What's the name of the game?
It's called Sheep. It's a surprise, Sukoban-like. And it's on my itch.io. So if you go to itch.io Daisy Games, you'll find a game. It's not Dark Sheep. Dark Sheep is like the improved version that I released commercially. It's just Sheep.
Now, there is so much juicy stuff that we need to get into. But now we've already got into Godot. In 2019, you said you started using Godot.
Yeah.
Was that around the time when Godot 3 sort of first officially started coming out as an alpha?
It must have been out longer, I think, because I remember there was a tutorial I watched, and it was like it was tutorial series from games from scratch, and I think it's been out for a while because there was like all the episodes were already out.
Oh wow, okay, and that was for Godot 3.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
It must have been early version. I think it was like. It must have been like, well, maybe not early. It was like 3.2 version I used back in 2009, something like that.
Impossible. My memory must be terrible because I was under the impression that 2019 was when it was just Godot 3.0 releasing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I don't have the official date anywhere, so
yeah.
I might just be misremembering things.
Back then, I didn't like even pay attention to like what kind of version it was because it was like, oh, I have Godot, let's make a game, right? Before worrying about like, oh, there's an upgraded engine version, or like what kind of version is it, or Godot 3, Godot 4. Yeah, I just didn't pay attention to that at all. So my memory might be wrong as well.
No, yeah, absolutely. Now, so you made this game. Right, you made this game. You released this game somewhere at that point, correct?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
It's like HTML5 version, so just browser game.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Now, what happens next? Because from my understanding, this is right around that time when you start releasing games commercially, right? What happened at that time?
Well, I released it. I sent it to every single friend of mine. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I finally released my first game. Let's make another one. So, there were some like bugs I like fixed, patched in. I actually remember I got this game on Armored Games as well. That's like a portal for online games. They used to be big into Flash games back then. Today they still run the portal. It's HTML5 games, and they're also a publisher, so you can even like find games on Steam. They publish.
Oh, that's interesting. Really?
Yeah.
Flash games were amazing.
Because the idea back then, I remember, I was like, okay, I made my first game.
Yeah.
I worked really hard, you know. It took me 16 years to get here. How do I get some financial, what's the word, compensation for my 16 years long efforts?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, there's online games, right? I can probably put it on a game. They run ads and they'll give me a cut. Well, I was wrong. A lot of sites don't do that anymore. I know what Armored Game does is that they were like, oh, you can have microtransactions. And, you know, I'm a gamer first. Or back then I was gamer first. Today I'm more of a game developer. But yeah, back then I was gamer first. And I was like, microtransactions? No, I hate it. I'm not doing that. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I have to release a game on Steam. But before I do that, let's get a bit more experience. So yeah, a few days after Sheep releases, I sit down and I make this game called Squares, which is the predecessor of my first commercial game, Hagrid. And same deal, you know, like 2-3 days to make the game. It's different because the game isn't controlled by keyboard, but by mouse. So I also learned something new about mouse input and things like that. It was also a bit more, quote-unquote, real-time because it's not like grid-based. Like you slide a block and it like actually moves on the screen smoothly, you know, so it's like these little things that you wouldn't even say are like big deal. But back then I was like, oh, how do I make it move? How do I know when it should stop? Collisions, blah, blah, blah. So same thing. I release it. I send it to all of my friends. And I'm like, okay, I got 2 little games out, you know, made them in less than a week combined together. Where do I go from here? And then I find out there's a game jam called... Oh, I don't even remember. But it was like 14 days long game jam. Quite a long one. For beginning developers. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna join it. And I find out the theme ends up being something like, oh yeah, a game show. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to make something bigger, better, cooler. And 14 days is a lot of time. Like, I can make games in 3-4 days. Oh my god, the things I could do in 14 days. Can you imagine?
Oh, there you go. That's a superpower all of a sudden, isn't it?
Yeah. So I make this. So the idea is that it's a game show where you're locked in a haunted house, and there's someone who wants to kill you, and you have to escape it. And in order to escape it, you must collect some items. And the final item you get, you either have to let a timer wait out, or the audience, because it's a game show, remember, will decide to give you the item. And in order to get that item, you must satisfy them. So you don't want to be just like stealthily avoiding the killer. You want to like engage in chases, or even get hurt to please the audience, right? Because they want to see exciting stuff. They don't want you to be boring. Now, the game seems to run only on my computer because it's incredibly buggy, incredibly broken.
No one else has been able to turn it on.
Well, it will turn on, but they won't be able to finish it. At best, at worst, it's gonna crash because it tries to play the sound file that doesn't exist because I took it out for some reason.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but it was, so this was, it's funny because I got a bit too ambitious, but at the same time, like, I actually managed to finish this big ambition. So that was my second game, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I managed to do this in 14 days. Well, what if I try to do something a bit smaller? Because this was really tough. I stood up, like, there were days when I would work on this like 16 hours. I went really hard.
16 hours
especially during the last half of the game jam, which was an entire week. I went brutal. I was like, okay, we're doing this.
You weren't sleeping, you weren't eating, you were just making a game.
Yeah.
Wow.
For 7 days straight.
That's some dedication right there.
Yeah. So this game gets finished, and I'm like, okay, I managed to make this. This was also the first game that had like a better menu than the previous ones. And yeah, I was like, okay.
So what do you mean by a better menu?
Oh yeah, so basically
it had multiple buttons, or what was it?
Yeah, pretty much. The first games they had like a button you would press and it would turn off the sound or the music, and that was it. And this game actually not only had a slider you could move, okay, but also
that's awesome.
The menu was like a separate scene, so it wasn't just displayed on the HUD. Like you would actually click, and a new scene would. The way I did this, and I did this for a long time. I don't have like a scene that's hidden and it appears when you go into the settings. It spawns the scene because I don't know why.
That's very nice. It's very clean, isn't it? It's either there or
why
really not there.
Why would you have stuff that's like hidden? Why would you do that? Just spawn it in and spawn it out as you need.
Obviously, yeah.
I gotta save the computing power because it's 2024 and computers are really slow.
Yeah, you've got so much RAM that we need more. So yeah, no, I completely understand that. So this was a menu with sliders, and it was being spawned separate scene. Okay, I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, time to make a commercial game. So that means I need a proper menu where you can actually change the keybinds. That was something. I also ended up towards the end of the development. I also decided to throw in localization. Because I heard localization helps with getting more players.
You did all of the difficult things, right? Because changing input, that's usually a very difficult undertaking. Because you get to be thinking of things, showing it the right way, making sure that the user flow is correct, right? You first need to click it, you ignore some input.
Well, in Hagrid, I was smart because you have only one set of bindable keys.
Okay.
Which makes things so much easier because once you introduce the second set, you run into problems that today I can solve. But back then, I think I would Google the nearest bridge if I had to deal with that.
Okay. So once again, we're coming back to the fact that you were just smart about it, and that made it easier for you.
Yeah. I mean, actually, not in this case, because I think in this case, it just didn't occur to me that people would like two sets of rebindable keys for a puzzle game that you control mainly with your mouse.
Right.
Like the keybinds were for reset and undo, and that was it. But yeah, some people complained about it, so I was like, okay, well, my second game needs to have two rebindable key sets because people want it for some reason. Yeah, but this game, it took around a month to make because I wanted things like a proper menu, achievements, some kind of tutorial. It was I had undo. Well, it was limited to only last move, which turned out to be a mistake. People really didn't like it. Yeah, but like it did feel like more of a game. Now, granted, it felt like a game that would release in like 2010 or something. But I didn't care. It was my first commercial product.
No, that's atmosphere. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So I released that, and I released it originally on itch.io only, and it released in late January 2021. So itch.io only, and it sells like 12 copies in the first week. Ooh. And I'm like, oh, this is really bad. What do I do? Well,
wait, you weren't happy with 12 copies? Really?
Oh, absolutely not. That's horrible. How am I going to pay for food?
Well, yeah, no, I agree. That from that perspective, it's really difficult. But considering, releasing something for the first time in a slightly more serious way, that's a lovely success, though.
Maybe if you have no ambition, yeah. I just don't see it that way. I think if you came to me and you were like, hey man, I released my first game, I sold 12 copies. I'm on a way to like become indie game developer full time, I'd be like, you need to go see a doctor because your IQ is like 50 right now. Like,
12
what are you
copies
talking
is
about?
not enough for this.
It's not enough. You should be crying right now and like I don't know, sacrificing animal to the dark one.
Yeah, all right. I see what your outlook is. I see this from a different perspective, where I think that even if you're serious about it, it could be considered a stepping stone, right? If you're
for sure.
If you're sober about it, of course. If you think that I'll just replicate this success 10 more times and I'll be making and then I will have sold 120 copies altogether. That's not really a business plan, right? You can't you can't turn that into something. Yeah, but being sober about it, I think, is really important.
I feel like I had that euphoria with like the free games I released, because I think that was like really huge for me, right? Because like I said, it took me 16 years to get there. So I think by the time I got to the commercial release, like of course I was happy and everything, but I didn't make it like, it was first game, so I never like expected it to be hit or anything.
Oh yeah.
But I was hoping it's maybe gonna set me on the path of game development a bit better than 12 copies. But to be fair, like despite of like not being happy with it, I didn't let it stop me. So basically, in like the week after release, I started working on putting it on Steam. Nice. So I gave Steam money. I started setting things up. I started looking into Steam achievements, which which came later because back then. So I think we both used the API made by our friend Sam for our games? Or
no,
do you use
I used the one by Gramps.
Oh, okay. So I don't know if I saw that one. Wait, is that a Godot Steam one or is that a different one?
That's Godot Steam.
Yeah. So I tried Godot Steam back then, and it just broke my game back then.
No.
My game would randomly crash, freeze, mouse clicking wouldn't work. To this day, I don't know if it was just my code was so bad it just didn't want to work with the plugin, or maybe there was some issue. I don't know. But I was like, okay, this is breaking my game. We're not gonna do this. We'll do achievements later when,
Absolutely.
I don't know, things are better. So then our mutual friend Sam made his cool API, which then I used for achievements, and it was like half a year after I released Hagrid on Steam or something. But so I started working on releasing Hagrid on Steam right away. I released it on Steam. I launched it with like 100 wish lists. I go like crazy on Twitter, Reddit, just guys, my first game, look, it looks like a Dust game. Buy it. It's only $2 or something.
Buy it now. It's a retro game. Please, look, it's good.
Yeah.
Your marketing efforts were not in vain, because I remember noticing the game.
No, I was.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I was like, I hope you weren't one, but every class has a class clown, right? That's incredibly loud. That was basically me on social media. I was so loud, like. Somebody noticed. It wasn't many people, but people noticed.
Oh yeah, I imagine specifically people in the Godot community back then there were so very few games being released on Steam.
Yes.
That was a bit of a leg up that you had, because you could say, look, I've got a game. It's a Godot game. I'm putting it on Steam, and the community around Godot was suddenly taking notice of it.
Especially if it was your first game. People are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna leave you a review.
The story,
you can't stop me.
The story you could have gone with, after 16 years of countless lessons and mistakes. I'm releasing my first game.
I don't know if I said this in the Godot post, but I'm quite sure there was a post like that somewhere I posted where I said that.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful, actually. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. And like that's the funny thing is that I remember I sold over 12 copies in the first day on Steam. And then I think in the first week I sold over 50 copies.
Nice.
Something like that.
Okay.
And I saw this and I was like, okay, so first off, of course the numbers are like not good, but I like stopped and I was like, okay, let's do a bit of analytic like thinking. So itch.io 12 copies 1 week, Steam 12 copies 1 day. Okay, cool. Also, I don't think I showed the Steam version around as much as the itch.io version because I just had less time to show it.
Right.
So also like that was the thing when I was showing around the itch.io version. I remember everyone asking like, "Oh yeah, this looks cool. Is it gonna be on Steam? Is it gonna be on Steam? Is it gonna be?" Everyone just like, "Oh, if I buy it on itch.io, am I gonna get Steam key?" Like. Steam all the way, man. Like you release a PC game, put it on Steam. unless it's like a casual match-free game, then like you should put it on sites like Big Fish Games. Those do there much better than on Steam, but like everything else, just put it on Steam. So I was like, okay, so Steam is clearly the way to go. I released the game, sold this many copies. Let's try to make a bigger game, and let's see if I can make it do slightly better.
I really like this moment. Let me just... One thing that developers just in general struggle with, right? In general, is scoping their projects in a way that they can release a reasonable number of projects in a reasonable time frame. You seem to be super good at this. Would you say that this was, how did you get to the place where you know how to scope your projects within a time frame that you know is doable for you, and that will allow you to have a certain cadence of making this? Because let me just throw it out there. In the past 4 years, correct me if I'm wrong, you've released 12 games. 3 years. In the past 3 years.
Sounds. I think that's the exact count. And DLCs, some free updates and some paid DLCs.
My goodness, so sorry. Yeah, no, I just didn't think that was possible. Right, so 3 years, 12 games. So you're averaging 4 games a year. That is amazing. And then some DLCs on top of that. How did you think that you got there? Was it the experience that you had with, trying for 16 years and then finding out that if you scope small, you can actually get something done? And then that kicked it off? Or was it the first experiences with Steam?
It's definitely just, if you fail for so long, you are like, okay, this thing isn't working. Maybe I should try something different. And then when you finally get the success of finishing a game with that, it really sticks with you. So that was definitely part of it. Another part of it is that, this can be a double-edged sword. I think now this is something I have to move away from. But I'm very good at this mentality of good enough.
Okay.
This is good enough. There's no need to spend another 50 hours on this. It's going to be better, but is it going to be that better? No. Also, the thing about my games is that, excluding the newest one, they're all really very simple games. It's like you have a puzzle, you solve the puzzle, and you go to the next puzzle. Now, if I get fancy, there's going to be cutscene here or there, or maybe there's going to be a dialogue box that pops at the start of the level that's going to communicate a story with you. But that's it. So the games are very small scoped in what they are. In fact, I think I spend more time in those older games. I spent way more time making the levels than actually programming things. There was reusing code. So, this menu stuff works. Let's use it again. Oh, this way of storing, loading achievements works. Let's use it again. Oh, this way of detecting collision works.
Actually,
let's
about
use it
that,
again.
Had you created a sort of a template project folder that you just copy and paste and have most of the things in there, or did you copy paste code every time?
I just copy pasted code every time because I never wanted the code to be 100% same. Because first off, even during my first game, by the end of it, I was like, okay, these are things I can do better, and if I want to expand on it, this is crap. I should rewrite this. So I reused code, but I rewrote some parts where I felt like it would be really beneficial for the future. And, sometimes the game's going to be something different in some other regard. So then also, you can reuse the code because it just doesn't work for what you need.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I to this day, I still don't have a template per se, because as time goes on, I'm like, okay, I grew as a programmer. The last time I made purely game that's actually Sokoban was a year ago. I see a lot of mistakes. Let's just do this from beginning. It's gonna be better. So for example, if we're if you talk about games that are Sokoban or Sokoban Light, then we would be talking Dark Sheep, which released April 2021. Then it was next year, April 2022, Sokobos. Okay. So both Sokoban games, very different code base. If anything, the stuff that stuff that Sokobos still uses from Dark Sheep is stuff like menus, rebindable keys, stuff like that. And then last year in August, I released Soko Solitaire, which is a bit more similar to Sokobos in its code base. But again, I made that game from scratch because in a year I grew so much as a developer that I was like, okay, let's do this even better. And right now, I was thinking about making some kind of template, but I'm not sure because I think I want to make more games like Crossroad OS in the future rather than sticking to my Sokoban roots.
Yeah. Let's actually go into this. I don't think we have the time to go through all of the games in detail. But
that's fine. There's a lot.
Yeah, this would be a really long podcast then. But majority of your games have been Sokoban games, right? We've talked about this, because we've known each other for a while now. And I remember asking you about how you design the puzzle levels, what your process is. I think that could be something extremely valuable. Would you go into that a little bit? How do you go about creating difficulty, how do you strike that right difficulty? Because when I think about it, I think to myself, okay, level 1 is some degree of difficult, right? And then level 20 has got to be not 20 times more difficult, but it's got to be a challenge that is considerably and consistently higher than the previous ones. I wouldn't know where to begin. How do you do this?
Well, so funnily enough, this is something that has changed very drastically with Crossroad OS because people actually want to play Crossroad OS and actually want to see it through, unlike my previous games. So the TLDR is that for the beforehand stuff would be that I focused a bit too much on difficulty. I focused too much on making the puzzles difficult and giving people really hard time because there are puzzles where people can spend an hour trying to solve a single level.
I'm one of those, yes.
I still haven't figured out how that came to be. I just saw when people came me, this puzzle was so hard, it took me 1 hour to solve. I just saw it as some kind of badge of honor. I think this is because I probably started gaming, super early when games really didn't hold your hand, didn't care about you. Oftentimes they would have bullshit difficulty because they want to extend the playtime. And I think that just was so ingrained in my brain is that it was just natural to me. I don't think about it. So I think Crossroad is more interesting to talk about because first off, it's actually something you can apply to make a game people will want to play, but also because it's much more interesting too. Because what Crossroad OS does is that the game is great whenever you're new to puzzle games or if you've played puzzle games before. Because turns out the secret of making a good puzzle game is making puzzles that are fun, enjoyable.
Right.
Sometimes AAA studios throw this term around and I don't like it. It's a bit dirty, but engaging.
Okay.
Puzzle games should be this is cool to play, or that makes me feel smart. I solved this. But you can do it without just crushing the person's sense of intelligence.
Yeah, I've heard that one of the reasons why puzzle games are not exactly loved by streamers is specifically because of this, right? They want to be doing something fun on stream, but instead they know that there's a high chance that a puzzle game is going to make them look or feel rather dumb, right? Just to be clear, right, so most of your previous games were Sokoban games. Crossroad OS, how would you describe Crossroad OS? Because that's your latest title. By the way, everyone listening to this, just right now, go to Steam and check out Crossroad OS. It's a really unique, fun puzzle game. I've downloaded it, played it. I got stuck, I'll be honest. When it comes to puzzle games, it's not really my cup of tea. But I don't know how far into it I got, but I gave it a couple of hours and I really enjoyed my time there. How would you describe Crossroad OS?
The Witness meets Windows 95.
Oh no, that is such a good explanation. And I can't agree with it more. Wow. Oh my god, what a one-liner. Okay, how did the project come to be? Because I know that this is a game that you haven't worked on by yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the story behind this? How did that happen?
So, me and my friend Guy, I think he reached out to me on Twitter. I don't even remember when this was exactly, but we talked a bit on Twitter. I knew about him before because our mutual friend showed me his game on Steam called Bonky something. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it's the Ballad of Bonky.
Yes. And I loved it. I was like, this is amazing. This is like the best game in Godot I ever played. Wow, this guy must be awesome. And yeah, we got talking, and one time he's like, it would be cool to make a game together. I'm like, yeah, that would be cool. I have like a lot of... Back then I was working on Sokochess White.
Okay.
And he's like, by the way, it would be cool if I could like help you with something in your game. I have some ideas that could make it like cooler. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I can't really like pay you or anything though. And he's like, no, it's okay. I like doing it. So he basically like just added juice to the game, which like made the game like much more like better. Fun to play, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And eventually we just were like, okay, let's join a game jam together. So we did. We made a little short first-person puzzle game with a really cool mechanic where you take a picture, you enter the picture, and you can do this to like manipulate the space. You can rotate the picture so you're upside down. You can bring in objects into the picture so you can like duplicate some items. It was very short and sweet.
That's a very interesting concept. I've seen a similar game floating around, the ethos of Twitter a couple of, maybe a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. Was that your inspiration, or were you the ones who came up with the idea first?
So the way this happened is that there would be a question for him, because it was originally just something he was doing for fun.
Okay.
And he showed it to some friends.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, I have this cool mechanic. We could totally like make a game jam out of it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds fun. And the role, and this funnily enough carried pretty much to Crossroad OS as well, is that he's the guy who's responsible for programming. I'm the guy who makes the puzzles, comes up with the mechanics for the puzzles, and then of course like we do brainstorming sessions together. And yeah, so we made the puzzle game in a jam like this together, and it was pretty good. I liked it. Working on it was fun. It was also like, the thing about being solo developer is that it can be just so taxing because you have to do everything. So teaming up with someone so you can focus mostly on the puzzles, it just feels good, man. There's no other way to put it. It's just so freeing. You can focus on one area and like just squeeze the most out of it.
I was just about to ask you how you found the transition, right? Because being a solo developer also means that you take accountability and you own everything you do.
Yeah.
How was the transition when you finally had a project where there was someone else and you suddenly weren't the one doing everything, but you had your own little, your separate responsibilities?
Yeah.
Was it easy all the way through?
The jam was fine. The jam was easy because like we have so little time. Like we just gotta do something. Let's go. With Crossroad OS, obviously you have much more time. You have brainstorming sessions, and sometimes you don't agree on things, right? So sometimes like you have this idea, the other person has the other idea, and like then you just talk it out. One thing I'll say is that in Crossroad OS, I've definitely taken like a more backwards position. So Guy basically had the final say, which like I don't regret because the game turned out absolutely amazing. It's the best thing I ever worked on. But I don't think there's such a thing as like true 50-50 cooperation. Even if it's just the two of you in the project, someone's gonna have to like take the lead role. And yeah, you basically, if you don't agree, like, okay, I'm willing to give you the final word, or I think it's gonna be better you have the final word, then like the project's not gonna work out.
No, that's very difficult. It's my experience as well. If it's if there's a team striving for true 50-50 or equal distribution of the final decision rights, sometimes there's this massive danger of a decision coming to a stalemate where it just never gets made, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was difficult to get used to, right? Because I went from being sole developer that just does everything, has the final say, to like, I said this, and like he doesn't, like we can't agree on it, right? So like, basically I was thinking about it one day, and I'm like, okay, so either this game gets made or not, and the game is really cool. I really want to see this game through, and also like I've tried doing things my way, so maybe it's not bad trying to do things different way. I think it worked out great. It was definitely like a big learning experience. And I think there are decisions where like, I think maybe if it was done my way, it would be better. But I can also see decisions where I'm like, oh, thank God I agreed to what he suggested. Because like my idea was just worse, or it was just downright bad.
Absolutely. if every idea would have been better your way, then I think you'd be an all-star game designer that never makes a wrong decision.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big strength about like having multiple people on team, even if it's just like one extra person, is that I don't care who you are, you never have the best idea in every single subject. Like everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. So I think it's like a good ability to be able to tell, okay, this person just understands this section of game development much better than me. I'm gonna listen to them. Maybe if I have objection, I'm gonna bring it up. I'm gonna like question it. But like if they, I'm gonna be just lenient towards like, okay, you're right. Let's do it this way.
Right. It sounds like a really cool learning experience, but also experience in general, right? For game development.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Team dynamics. What about the future? So Crossroad OS was released. Oh, wait, before we go on to the future, are you happy with the release of Crossroad OS?
I mean, it's like I finally released a game that like people actually want to play, you know? So it feels really good. I would like, there's a bit of like disappointment in myself, like, man, like, why did it take like this long to release a game like this? Why couldn't I do it alone? But also like at the same time, like all those little games I made by myself, like they were really great experiences. And maybe if I never made them, I would like never meet Guy. So maybe Crossroad OS would never get made. So it's hard. I wouldn't say I like regret my past, because like it's like I'm here because of it. Also, when I compare Crossroad OS to my previous games, I just have such a much better understanding of like why those games didn't pick off as much as Crossroad OS did.
Right.
Not to mention that like just the way I design puzzles for it is just like so much better, and that was also like huge learning experience.
Gotcha.
So like in the future, I want to make more games like Crossroad OS rather than games like Succubus or Dark Sheep.
Yeah. This is an interesting thing. Is there anything in Crossroad OS now, after it's been released and after you've seen people play it, that you can't change now, but if you could, you would go back in time and change it?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably like super boring answer, but the game released with nah, that one's fine. But
it's fantastic.
I just wish it was less buggy on release.
Okay.
There are, compared to my games, like it's the buggiest game I worked on that release, or that we released. I mean, we basically, the first 4 days we were like releasing like multiple patches every single day. So all the biggest issues are fixed. Thankfully, we fixed that very quickly.
Yeah.
We have a big update coming on Friday. We are like fixing a bunch of stuff. We're also adding some content that like or stuff that like we wanted in the original release but didn't manage. Also, like we got some feedback about like people being confused a bit too much about the story for our liking. So we're like also adding some things to like make it a bit clearer. But yeah, I think that's like my main gripe, is that I wish I managed to get a bit more comfortable with the code base so I could help a bit more with it, because now that it's released and I had time to get comfortable with the code base, I'm like helping fix bugs and everything. Because like the thing is, I'm like below average programmer, and Guy is really good. So when I first saw the code base, I was like, what is this? I can't understand this. I can't do anything.
How does this go flow?
Yeah. So like unironically, like 99% of the game is programmed by him. Which like that it kind of sucks, because I wish I could have done more and contribute more. So now I'm kind of making up for it post release, because I've had time to like get into the code, understand it, learn just even more about Godot 3D, especially because a huge part of the game is like 3D. So now I'm like thankfully catching up for it. So I guess it would be like me being able to get into the code base faster so that the game would release in less buggy state, because I would have been able to help with coding much more than I could have.
From my experience, being a part of a team where you're closely working together with another person that's better at programming is one of the fastest ways of becoming a better programmer as well.
Oh yeah, it's with everything, right? You never want to be the smartest person in the room, because then you can't learn anything.
Yeah. And plus, if you're working closely with them, you know, it's like shooting a skilled torpedo your way.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just
yeah.
progress very, very quickly. Right, and let's dive into the future a little bit. What's next? Do you have any plans? Are you going to work with Guy again?
Yeah, so we have a game idea we are talking about. We did a lot of brainstorming. Hopefully we can start work on it soon. So that's in the making. Also, I want to hone my 3D skill set a bit more. So I'm also making a little 3D non-puzzle game on my own on site.
I
Yeah.
can't believe that. I've only ever seen puzzle
Me
stuff from you.
neither.
This is,
Me neither. Yeah.
oh my! I'm really
Just
curious
last-
about what you make. Really curious.
Just last year, I was telling someone like, I'm never making 3D games. Do you know how long they take to make? Do you know how much more work it is than 2D? I'm never doing 3D. No. And here we are. New year, new me, I guess.
Yeah. There you go. Right. So you're. Are you considering starting a commercial project in 3D?
Oh yeah, it will be commercial. Like I like to get paid for my hard work, you know.
Absolutely. That's the best way to
Yeah.
go about it. Right. So you've been experimenting in 3D, and you're also you already have a game in the works or in the planning phase. With
Oh,
Guy.
it's in the works. Like
It's in the works,
Oh,
okay.
with Guy. We didn't like start a Godot project, but like we have done a lot of brainstorming. We generally know what we want to make. It's just we've been so busy like with Crossroad OS. That's why we didn't start it yet. But yeah, I think I'm like 99% confident the game will see the light of the day this year.
Absolutely. So dissecting that,
Yeah.
you are now going to have 2 projects, right?
Oh yeah,
that
it's
you're
my record is like 3 or 4 projects at the same time.
4 projects at the same time. I don't
Yeah.
think I would know what to do waking up in the morning, to be honest. How do you manage that?
That's the great part. Like, oh, it's morning. I feel like working on this. Oh, now it's afternoon. I'm tired of this. Let me work on this.
All right. So you've got time blocks, right? You just, I imagine they're not specifically, set?
It's just whatever I feel like doing. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
How
not planned.
How do you manage your time? Do you have a task list? Have you got documentation somewhere? How do you do this? Or do you hold everything in your head?
Well, usually I use Trello or some kind of other, just to write down like what do I need to do, or Notepad, whatever. Sometimes I get lazy and I hold things in head, which if I do that, I have to work on the game like daily, because if I take break for a couple of days, I just forget stuff. So yeah, just some kind of place to write things down. Also, you shouldn't do this, but sometimes I write into GitHub, hey, I started working on this, it needs to be fixed, there's issue here. Because I'm sole developer, right? Nobody else reads it but me. So sometimes I write notes in there.
That's super interesting. Where do you put that? Do you put that into pull request issues? Do you put that into the code as a comment?
Oh, just when I commit, I write it like
into
sometimes
the
if
commits.
if it's short enough, it's the commit. If it's long enough, it goes into the description of the commit.
And do you have a keyword that you put into at the begining of the commit message so that you know where
Oh
to
no
look
no
at
no
these
no
things?
no 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 no.
Oh, it's just random. It's just a sentence.
It's just yeah. I also use it to vent. Yesterday I was commenting something into Crossroad OS, which we use Godot 4, and I wrote something like, Godot 4 just decided to stop printing messages into the debug console. I'm so done for today.
Oh wow, yes. Commit messages. It's, to me, commit message log feels like a book I've been writing, a bit of a diary, right? Like a developer's diary that I can find anytime, and all that is going to be saved there, all that information. I see that you're using it in a very similar way there.
Yeah, next time I go get therapy, I'm gonna print it out and I'm gonna hand it over to the therapist, and I'm gonna be like, this is what's wrong in my life. You need to help me.
Take a look at this. You will know everything about me.
Yeah.
Right, and you touched on a very interesting thing there, which is Godot 4. Godot 4 released a year ago. This is your first project in Godot 4, I think, isn't it? Crossroad OS?
Yeah.
Okay, well, tell me about it. There are still people making the transition. There are many people who have made the transition already, right? But many still on Godot 3 because of reasons. Do you plan on starting your new projects in Godot 4? How has it been so far?
So this is something we disagreed with Guy on. I wanted Crossroad OS to run on Godot 3. He wanted Godot 4 because of the new programming stuff, which, to be honest, is cooler. I wish it's cool. I like it. But since he was the main programmer, he was the one who's gonna use it more, so we end up using Godot 4. So my current experience is with 4.1 stable. Because we've been just fixing the game so much, we didn't even have time to think about like upgrading to newer release.
Oh yeah, and
so
although Godot is very good at upgrading or updating to a newer version, it can really mess your project up if you update in the middle of it.
Yeah. So I can speak for Godot 4 to higher, but for 4.0 or 4.1, just don't use it for commercial projects. Stick to 3x, like I will with my solo games I'll be making just by myself. Just because, so like, where do I begin? So first off, your game is just gonna...
Yeah.
The biggest things. There's just stuff that will break that will not happen on Godot 3. And you can't know about it because barely any games have been released with Godot 4, so like we can't tell. So for example, this never happened with any of my games, so I know this is related to Godot 4 specifically. We have a problem where this is little. So we have this hack around solution where during the credits we make the window go windowed in case it's not. For some reasons I won't get into now, but this is like our hacky solution, and that's fine. And like we do this in other parts of the game, so it normally works fine. But during the credit sequence, for some reason, and I don't know if this is because there's like scrolling text or whatever, but the window goes windowed and it starts going down pixel by pixel by pixel until it hides below a taskbar, and it just stays there.
Below the taskbar, so you can't even drag it back up.
Yeah. And if you manage to catch it and bring it back up and let go of it, it will keep going down again. It's not reproducible. It's not some kind of bad code on our side. It's just something that happens to some people, and if it happens to them, it happens to them always. I don't know why. I just know it's Godot 4.
That's incredible. So there might be a link to the scrolling text or something,
Well, that's what I assume, because like in other parts where it doesn't happen, there's no scrolling text. And in the credits where you have scrolling text, I don't know, it could be caused by something completely else. It's just the only thing that comes into my mind, how I can like possibly explain this behavior.
This is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been the weirdest, biggest thing that Godot 4.1 has given you an issue with, I imagine.
Yeah. Now, like there could be multiple things we don't know about, right? Or that might not happen in our game. It's just, and this is unavoidable, of course, right? It's just that I think right now, Godot 4 is just too early for serious commercial projects. Like if it's your first game and you don't care, like go do it. But like if you're like a bit more serious about it, because like the thing is, every engine of course is gonna have like specific bugs that you can do nothing about, right? But I think if you release a commercial game and you want to be serious about it, I feel like your reputation is on the line. So I personally am interested in minimizing bugs I can do nothing about as much as possible. So in this regard, Godot 3 is just So in this regard, Godot 3 is better for me, because also there are some issues that I have with Godot 3 that I know about them. So if someone comes like, hey, this game behaves weirdly, I know I can tell, oh yeah, sorry, this is Godot specific issue, try this, blah, 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 or sorry, there's nothing I can do, I'm sorry, refund the game. Or play on another device. Or best case, I have a workaround, so I can be like, oh yeah, just go turn this thing off, and it's gonna work.
Or just do not implement this feature at all. The feature you're thinking about, just don't do it. It's easier that way.
Gamepad support or on Arch Linux, never use vibrations in Godot 3 because the gamepad will not stop vibrating even if you tell it to stop vibrating. It just will not stop vibrating on Arch Linux.
Arch Linux, which is really cool because every Arch Linux user will tell you that they're using Arch.
Yeah, of course,
I'm an Arch user, by the way. So yeah, I imagine that luck is also a big part of it. For example, I've been working on a game called Fog Piercing Godot 4.2. You mentioned that Crossroad OS is on 4.1, right? Yeah, on 4.2, and I just haven't met an issue, luckily, so far, right?
That's nice.
Yeah, which is, but given that the game, it's not the wildest, biggest game you can imagine, it's not using all of the various little features that are available through the engine, but I've just been super lucky.
Nice.
Yeah, so, ideally, a lot of stuff got fixed between 4.1 and 4.2. Chances are that bug with the scrolling window is still there. I hope it isn't. That's the weirdest thing.
Well, this is why we want to just upgrade the version once this big patch is done, because we're
Yeah.
hoping that some of these issues people have will just go away.
Have you just tried to quickly upgrade the version, just because, in about 5 minutes, just to see whether it runs or whether there are any issues?
I think we did, and Guy was like, "Oh yeah, this is working fine." And I was like, "Okay, cool, but we're not doing this before the big patch because there might be something super small that will mess up that like we won't find out unless we playtest the game a lot, and even then we might miss it. So let's do the patch in 4.1 because we know it a bit more, and then let's do the upgrade and see how it goes.
Let's give it time, yeah. Because
Yeah.
it's also very difficult to test the entirety of the game in a new version of the engine.
Yeah. Oh,
because you really do need to test everything.
Yeah, this is like such an important thing. I think is if you want to make games, you have to stop chasing the newest, shiniest toys, and sometimes you just gotta be like, I want a toy that I know works, or like I know how to use it. I know I'm going like a bit like backwards now in the conversation,
No,
but like
I mean,
it's just so important. And this is
Valuable
why
advice.
Yeah, and this is why I always joke that like programmers are the worst game developers, because so many programmers I know that are like really good programmers, they're like, oh man, I just spent 5 days, look at my NeoWim, look at these windows, these cool colors. Okay, cool, what did you code in the last week? What, coding? Look at my NeoWim, it looks so cool.
I
Or,
set
look,
up
I have the newest
my
version of
developer
this.
environment, it's fine, I don't need anything else.
Yeah. Now I need...
Sometimes it can really be like that, yeah.
Yeah.
What I usually tell people is, I don't know, I look at it from the perspective of accountability, I suppose, ownership. So it's fine to go for the newest thing if you have the right expectation. If you are going into it knowing that can introduce a lot of new issues and you're fine with it, it's on you, right? But it shouldn't be recommended as a generally good thing to be doing. You just want to be on the most stable, proven thing out there.
Yeah. It's funny because like this is also Godot 4 related issue that I also hope should be fixed in 4.2. So I know I'm like talking about negatives about Godot 4, but I just want to say like it's because I don't have the newest experience with the newer versions. But like one issue we have is that we have I work on some new features, some bug fix, I run the game, everything's fine, the code is fine, but some kind of internal error happens inside Godot editor,
and it just
the game crashes. But it tells me your code is fine. We just experienced internal error, which like it's no big deal. Like like my project doesn't get corrupted anything. But like if you're playtesting and it just crashes, and now you have to do the entire sequence again, it's a bit annoying. And like never experienced that. Never experienced it in Godot 3 either. So like it's like the bugs, they're just not in the game. They're like when you're playing the game in editor.
I've definitely also experienced that in Godot 3, but
really,
yeah. But it's a terrible thing to happen because it just feels like there's this voice in your ear that says something broke, but I'm going to tell you nothing else, and disappears. Right? That's all the information you have. Something somewhere is wrong, but you get no information about it.
This just reminded me when we were talking about like how I started with game development and how I used Godot for the first time. It took me like three commercial games, I think, to learn that there is such a thing as warnings, and that sometimes the warnings can cause actual like game crashes in a full release build.
Oh yeah. Warnings they can be very awry, right? Because it's easy to ignore them because they don't crash your game in the debug mode. But then you export it and something happens. You're like, but it works on my machine.
Yeah. I always remember like I would back then I talked a lot to Sam almost like daily about game development and stuff, and I always remember I would be like, hey man, what is an enum? And he's like, what do you mean what is an enum? Haven't you released 3 commercial games? And I'm like, yeah. So what is an enum? Can you tell me, bro?
I released 3 games, but no enums.
Yeah. Why use enums when you can have variables and constants, or you just have magical strings and magical numbers?
Oh, absolutely. It's much easier that way. Specifically to code it,
I know what 15 is. I work on this game. I made it.
What are you talking about? Variables? Just put it straight in the code, straight in the functions.
There's a code I remember in Hagrid where like the game has like UI, right? And it has the UI is it's just like single color and it has like different shapes. And I remember instead of making it like white and then modulating the color, I had a graphic for each part of the UI in like each of like 12 colors. And there's this code that is like if level smaller or equal 10, button 1, green graphic A, button 2, green graphic B, and it's like 30 buttons, right? Because like you have the normal, hover, press.
I love this.
Right?
I love this so much. It reminds me, I'm getting flashbacks of my own code when I started doing games, and
Yeah.
oh man, I can so relate to that one. That's crazy. But now going back to it and remembering it, it must feel pretty good. How? Yeah. When you compare it to your current level, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, like, it's funny thing because the more I learn, the more I realize, like, how much I have yet to learn. Also, like, it's funny is that I remember back then, because I knew modulating was a thing, but I remember I was, like, so scared of using that feature because I wasn't familiar with it that I was like, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm just gonna make all these sprites by hand, and I'm just gonna load them with code because I know how to do that.
Yeah. You complete a game through sheer force of will.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You just really power through, and you get it done any way possible. But then you learn. That's the way to learning, because this is hard, right? I do see that people who aren't ready to publish something with bad code, it's much harder to release a game that way. Should be. I think you should be ready to release some ugly stuff.
I think that's like a huge part of like just getting into game development and actually finishing project is that, or even improving. You just have to ask yourself, what am I capable of doing? What kind of challenge am I actually capable of overcoming without getting too scared and just dropping it? So I would even say that like back then what I did with Hagrid, where I didn't modulate the sprites, I just drew them by hand, was the right choice, because like the thing is like, could I have learned like how to modulate things with code properly? Yeah, of course. But the thing is, when you're making a game, you're gonna run into like 100 of these things, right? So you have to decide, this is what I'm gonna do in like the dirty, disgusting way that would get me fired, because I'm already like facing these hard challenges I have to overcome over here. And if all I'm gonna do is fight challenges, I'm not gonna finish this, or it's
you
gonna
would never
take
finish
me
it.
much
Never.
more time. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe you would, but many years later. But then motivation starts running out, and when your motivation runs out, you no longer have a reason to be doing what you're doing.
I don't even know if I believe in motivation, to be honest. Because like for me, maybe motivation, there's definitely, you need passion. Like the only reason why I managed to make games and still do, even though like, they weren't super successful, is passion for sure. But like, if I look at myself and I think about, oh yeah, I would work on game only when I feel motivated. I don't think a single game, maybe the short games that took 3-4 days, but like even something like Hagrid that took a month to make, I don't think that would ever see the light of the world. Because like, I don't think I could stay motivated. There are just days when I sit down.
This is interesting. I think that we see motivation slightly differently. Because from what you're saying, it almost sounds to me that what you consider passion, I see as motivation. As in, to me, motivation is a reason to be doing something.
Okay.
Right? As in, something from the back pushes you a bit further, right? I see that as motivation. What's your view on motivation? That's very interesting. What's your view on motivation there? How do you see it?
The best, I have like the perfect analogy. I don't know if you can relate to this, but this is my experience from high school, because I used to be very obese, is that I would see a hot girl and I was like, oh my God, she's so hot, I want to go out with her. I'm going to eat healthy and go to the gym. And you do it for 2-3 days, and then you're like, you know what? Being single isn't that bad. So this is how I see motivation: is that there's like this fire inside you, and you're like, you're fired up, you're ready to go. You're like, I'm gonna do anything to achieve this thing, and then it disappears, calms down, and like you would still want to do it, but like, do you really want to do it that much? Do you feel like doing it right now? No.
No, this is a very good analogy. Yes. But I think what you're talking about there is that explosive motivation that comes from outside factors. It doesn't come from, from within sort of a thing, right? Where That would be it then, right? Wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because when your motivation comes from within, it's passion.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
I mean, I know, like, this is semantics at this point, right? But, like, that's how I... Also, maybe this is just, like, affected by the circle of people I'm... Well, today I'm in a bit different circles, but, like, when I think about, like, when I was growing up, or even my early days of trying to game development, every time, like, people spoke about motivation, it was, like, this outside thing where they wake up and they're like, oh, yeah, today I really want to do this. And then you're like, hey, how's your project going? You know, it's like, oh yeah, I just woke up, didn't feel like working on it, so I didn't. You know, so yeah.
I had no motivation, so I didn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So So that's how I see it.
Okay, this is a lovely topic that I personally I find this topic an endless source of wisdom, even, right? Because I think it's a massive thing to be talking about in our society, which is, why do you do things, right? And I think that's something that we all have to work out for ourselves, because we're all a little different, I suppose. But staying sober around it always helps.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is more or less all the time we have for the podcast. We went a little, a couple of minutes overboard, but that's fine. It's just going to be a bit of a longer episode. People will be happy because, there'll be more to listen to, of course.
Yeah. More content. Hooray.
Yeah. So I'd like to do two things. First of all, thank you very much for finding time and for accepting my invite to the podcast.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Yeah. It was lovely having you too. This was a fantastic conversation that, starting this whole podcasting is allowing me to finally have longer conversations with people that I've been meaning to have longer conversations with for a while now. So this is really good.
It's crazy. We knew each other for so long, and like this is the first time we actually sat down and talked for more than an hour. So
absolutely, every time we spoke before, it was about Steam issues.
Yeah.
GOG stuff and Anyways, so that's one thing, and a second thing is where can people follow you? Where should they go to wishlist your games? What's the best place to visit if they want to find out more?
Gotcha. So the best place would be, I think, my Discord, because I'm the most active there. So if you wanna just tell me how you like my game, ask anything, or even have some like maybe game development questions, you can just hit me up there. I post like everything I do just goes there. I announce new game, it goes there. I have a Patreon where I write like blog posts, which eventually are just free, available to everyone, even like people who don't pay. So yeah, if you want to learn a bit more about how I approach game development, it's there. I post some like VIP stuff there as well. So the Discord is probably the best one. Then will be, of course, like my games on Steam. I have a publisher page as well you can follow. I have Twitter at DaisyGames3. I don't know. At first I was like, Twitter just isn't the same, but lately I've had a bit more success there. So I don't know if Twitter will be much of a thing for me. We'll
That's
see.
A tough environment. It keeps on changing so very quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I think if you like genuinely wanna like know more about my work or catch up with what I'm doing, Discord's just the best. Or if you just care about the games, then just follow the Steam publisher page. That's the best one.
How can people get to your Discord?
Oh yeah, I have an invite link which it's on any of I can it's on each of my store page has like a join the Discord community button. So just go to any of my games, click it, and there you are.
Right. And on Steam you're under Daisy Games.
Daisy Games, yeah.
All right, that's DAISY Games.
Mm-hmm.
That is fantastic, and I'll put all of the links that I can find into the description of the episode. So yeah. Again, Martin, thank you very much. Say hello to Guy and tell him thank you because he's been helping me as well. This is fantastic stuff.
Awesome. Nice.
Yeah. And have a lovely day. And to the listeners, I wish you a lovely day as well. Look forward to the next episode. And when it comes out, it'll come out. All right. Bye.